Yesterday, I said TCU would have to rebuild this offensive line through the portal. They started that process on Thursday by landing a commitment from a Louisiana Tech offensive tackle. We'll talk about that more and next here on Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day.
You are Locked On Horned Frogs, your daily podcast on the TCU Horned Frogs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. I'm your host, Steven Simcox. Thank you for joining the show. TCU got a commitment in the transfer portal on Thursday. We're going to break that down in a second. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel, Locked On Horned Frogs. You can also find us wherever it is you get your podcasts. We're free and available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, etc. Thank you for supporting the show, however and whenever you do. I talked on Wednesday, or I guess it was Thursday, about the importance of rebuilding this offensive line through the transfer portal, right? You're losing 4 starters potentially. You're losing Brandon Coleman and Andrew. You also be losing John Lands at that center position and Willis Patrick at one of those guard spots. So you're really starting from scratch. And they don't at the time, I was recording that, they didn't have a lot of guys with significant snaps in the fold in that offensive line room. Mike Nichols is still around. He might be able to slot at one of those tackle spots, but he's dealt with injuries through his career. And then you have like Ben Taylor Whitfield, who had to play a lot this past season as a true freshman. Don't think that was what they intended or the ideal scenario, but just because of the inexperience in that position group, he had to step up and play a lot of snaps and get opportunities to play. So those 2 guys will be back. And they do have some game experience. You also have some interesting prospects. I talked about Tommy Brockermeyer, who was very highly recruited out of high school. He dealt with injuries this past season, and so he wasn't able to practice a whole lot. And I think you're still kind of in a situation where you're figuring out where exactly he is and what he can do and what he does well. One mistake I did make was I mentioned Garrett Hayes being a possibility for next year. But somebody pointed out to me that A.J. Ricker, the offensive line coach, when he was kind of going through thinking the seniors and thinking guys that had been through their career here, he didn't mention he mentioned Garrett Hayes as one of those guys that was moving on and thanked him for his time. So doesn't appear like Garrett Hayes will be someone that can play for you next year. So you don't have a lot of guys who have snaps. Colton Deary also started a lot of the season. He will be back, but you're losing the majority of that production for an O-line that struggled in general anyway last season. So TCU's trying to make this a priority, and they started that process by landing a commitment on Thursday from Carson Bruno, offensive tackle from Louisiana Tech. Jeremy Clark from 247 Sports says that Bruno will have 2 years of eligibility remaining. Good size, 6'4", 310 pounds. He's been a starter at La Tech for the past 2 seasons, has played a lot of games, was honorable mention All-Conference USA this past year, and so has played well for them, has been someone who's graded out well. Now, I mean, he played tackle at Louisiana Tech, so I'm guessing that's where they'll probably slot him in. Maybe he'll move inside. Possibly there's some position flex there. But with him in the fold, you have, this process that has started. They're also going after Cade Bennett from San Diego State, who's been a guard for the Aztecs for a couple of years. His teammate, Brandon Crenshaw Dixon, has played that tackle spot. And then another player they're potentially targeting is Monroe Mills, who's kind of been on the Big 12 tour. He was at Oklahoma State, and then he was at Texas Tech for the past couple of years, and has been a starting tackle for the past few years. He's rated really highly when it comes to portal prospects and offensive linemen. So with Carson Bruno in the fold now, as someone who's had a lot of experience, has played at the G5 level, can play tackle, maybe potentially can play guard as well. So you have him, you have Colton Deary coming back. And then if you could get Bennett from San Diego State, if you could get maybe Dixon, I think they need 2 or 3 more that have experience and that can either start or can be slotted in as players that could play significant snaps if there was an injury or maybe rotate in and out. You do have Mike Nichols coming back, so he could compete for a spot. I would think Bruno's going to have the inside track here to start at one of these slots. And I feel like, transfer player X, whether it be Mills or Bennett or Dixon, could come in and be the other one. But if you have Bruno and you land one of these other linemen that I mentioned, preferably 2, and then you have Deary and Whitfield as well. You got 5 or 6 guys who can compete for a starting role, and you at least feel okay about that. Maybe you don't feel amazing. It's not going to be the top offensive line of the nation, but hopefully it's a group that could gel together and grow together as the year goes on. They have to be better in the run game, and I think they're trying to make an emphasis to get bigger, more physical players who can start up front and play at a high level for them. The pass protection, I felt like improved as the year went on. We saw with Josh Hoover, whether that was – I can't really tell if the transition with Josh and throwing the ball more was more about circumstances. It was just like, hey, we can't really run effectively. That's not working well with our offense. We're going to supplement that with the quick game, getting the ball out fast, a lot of screens, a lot of outs, a lot of high percentage throws. And then hopefully off that we can throw down the field. But as far as just running between the tackles, like we were early in the season against some of the smaller defensive lines that we were playing, we don't feel like we can do that anymore. I'm not sure if it was that or if it was just, Hoover came in as somebody who played in a offense where they slung it around at Rockwall Heath. And so maybe that was part of it too, a combination of both. But I think regardless of that, of whatever's going on with that situation, they're going to want to run the ball better this season. I'm guessing Amani Bailey's coming back, which would be huge if he does make it there. And then you got a feature back and maybe Trey Sanders, maybe Cam Cook. We'll see what Trent Battle and Corey Wren do moving forward. But you have a lot of options at the running back position that can run, but you have to block to do that effectively. And so this is a good start, a good pickup. It feels like TCU's kind of changing their philosophy a little bit. Last season, they went after a lot of players, and it was mainly skill guys. They didn't really focus too much on the O-line other than, bringing in Patrick and Deary. But they went after guys that had played at the Power 5 level, maybe didn't play a lot, maybe dealt with some injuries, whatever the case may be. They weren't getting snaps in their current school, like Alabama, Ole Miss, Minnesota, whatever the case may be. So come here, we'll get you more playing time, and that didn't work for the most part. And so now they're transitioning to, okay, let's find guys no matter what level of football it is that have played, right? And this doesn't exactly fit with Monroe Mills because he's played at Texas Tech and has played at Power 5 football his whole career. But with Cade Bennett, with Dixon from San Diego State, and then with Bruno from La Tech, we have a number of players that they're just kind of banking on the fact that they've played well at their previous stops, even though it's not the competition they're going to see at TCU, that's going to translate and that they're going to be able to get after it and play effectively immediately and be ready to play at a high level once they get on campus and once they get ready, to slot in. I think the other thing about this is you hope that whoever you land in the portal, you can get them ingrained and get them ready to go, and hopefully they can participate in spring practice together. Because as I've said before, so much of it with the O-line is about chemistry. It's about understanding how to play together, how to move together, how to get, go in the same direction, and just communication. All right, how are we going to pick up different blitz packages? How are we going to handle, what defenses throw at us? How are we going to communicate with the quarterback on the protection? What do we need to do? How do we block things up effectively so they can be able to go out and make plays? That's going to be a huge part of this as well, because so much of this position group is predicated on, communication, working together, 5 guys being one collective unit and doing that effectively. So there's going to be some challenges because you're going to have new faces, regardless of whether you do it within the program or through the portal. The advantage of doing it within the program is a lot of your twos have been practicing together, right, and have played with the same coaching staff and understand the expectations. But that's not the luxury that TCU has because of the situation that this coaching staff was brought into with a really thin position group at O-line. And so they're going to have to build that up and try to make that better and do it on the fly. But they have a good start here with the process with landing Carson Bruno. Again, 6'4", 302 pounds, has been a starter at La Tech for the past 2 seasons and announced on Twitter yesterday that he's going to be heading to TCU. So good pickup by A.J. Ricker, good pickup by the staff. Start this process, get it going, and then, we'll see how things come out in the wash in a few months when everything settles down. When we come back, A key TCU wide receiver is returning. He announced that on Instagram yesterday. Excited for that. This is Locked On Horned Frogs. It's your team, and we do it every day. PrizePicks, NFL games all this weekend. We'll also have the NBA in-season tournament, that championship game between the Pacers and the Lakers. Exciting stuff. You can bet on prizepicks.com/LockedOnCollege. Use the promo code LockedOnCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. It's simply, betting on stats, higher or lower stat totals, and then you go from there. They have a cool combo projection situation right now where you can bet on NBA and NFL combo props, and they're really the only daily fantasy app that does that. They also have an injury reboot policy, so if your player gets injured, you can get rebooted and get another opportunity. That's the only daily fantasy sports app that has that type of insurance. PrizePicks.com/LockedOn. They also have an easy-to-use app, Locked On College, for a first deposit match of up to $100. PrizePicks.com/LockedOn. Use that today, and we'll get after it here on the Locked On Network. PrizePicks, we thank them for their sponsorship. If this episode's a little shorter than normal, I'm sorry. I'm still dealing with a cold or allergies or something or the other, and so I'm trying to power through this and get it done. But that's the reason for some of the sniffling that you're probably hearing. I know that's not ideal, but that's just kind of is what it is. Savon Williams is coming back. Key wide receiver for TCU. He posted a pretty long message to TCU fans on Instagram on Thursday. I'll just read the last of it. He said, "With that being said, I have more to prove with this team. I've decided to come back to TCU and spend my senior year at home. This year is our year." So super exciting stuff. Savon, we talked a lot this year about TCU having to play wide receiver by committee to a certain degree. Who's going to emerge as the go-to guy. That never really happened. But I think towards the end of the season, it was clear that Josh Hoover had some chemistry with Savon Williams. He trusted him. He was a guy that he felt like could make plays. He finished the year with 41 receptions for 573 yards and 4 touchdowns. And this is his 4th season. That was actually, from a statistical standpoint, his best year. In 2022, he had 392 yards. But a couple things I like from Savon that I saw this year, he's always had that physicality. He's never been somebody that shied away from blocking down the field. That was something he's done really effectively. He's big, right? He's got that huge frame. But I loved when they would get him involved in the quick passing game. I hope they do more of that next season, because he just runs angry. Like, he runs pissed off, man. He gets downhill and he'll stick his shoulder and his head down there and try to run through people. And it seems like it kind of gets the team fired up when he does that, which is good. You need leaders like that. The thing that he does best, and hopefully with Josh getting an opportunity, we'll see who they bring in the portal from a quarterback perspective, but you would assume that he at least will have the entire offseason to kind of work with these guys. You would think that vertical passing game, the timing, all those aspects of it should be better, should be sharper going into kind of year 2 with him as a full-time starter, really his first full season as a full-time starter, if he ends up winning the job, which I think he will. And so hopefully that's better. Hopefully they can come together and get on the same page in that regard. Savion's a guy that he can use that frame to go up and catch the football in a way that really nobody else on this roster can. Maybe Dalen Wright when he's healthy, but those 50-50 balls, those jump balls, those are opportunities you want to see him go and get. And he had a few chances in the Tech game where Josh just left the ball a little long, not quite fully there, right? They did hit on kind of a 1-to-1 situation against Baylor. But you hope that he gets to the point, kind of like Quentin in his final season at TCU, where if it's man coverage and it's pretty obvious that it is, give Savon a chance, right? Like, it doesn't have to be a fade pattern to enter the goal line. It can be in any sort of down and distance situation, kind of any part of the field. Give him the opportunity to work down the field, go attack the football, go make plays. That would be a big part of this offense that's missing at the moment. But Savon Williams coming back, he's kind of the first guy to announce it. In the portal era now, there's so many options. Like, guys can go to the NFL. They can hit the transfer portal and sort of see, like, all right, could I get some NIL money? Is there an opportunity for me to get involved in the aspect of it. There's a lot of different things that you can do. But Savon saying that he's going to stick with TCU and be back for a 5th season, which is super exciting. Was happy to pass that news along. One name that I'm watching, so there's still plenty of time in this window to enter the portal, but I'm kind of surprised we haven't seen a Chandler Morris announcement yet. I would think that he would be moving on and going somewhere, but I don't want to put words in his mouth. Obviously, I don't know what his plans are. I'm not sure where the coaching staff is with evaluating him this year, sort of what they thought of when he was healthy, how he played. The coaching staff could very well be like, well, we didn't really feel like we got to see the full Chandler experience because he just wasn't able to stay healthy throughout the year. But I'm wondering if we see something in the next few days. I'm just kind of surprised that we haven't had any movement on it yet, because I would think Chandler would be a guy that would have a lot of interest if he decided to try to move on. And there's so many quarterbacks in the portal now, but I'm not reporting anything there. I'm just kind of interested in his decision and want to see what he does. So I'm surprised that we haven't really seen any announcement or any rumors about where he might go. Final thing in this segment. So Matthew Golden has hit the portal. And if you remember that name, Matthew Golden was a TCU commit at one time. He's now at Houston and has had a really fantastic season. 404 yards receiving this past year on 38 receptions, 6 touchdowns. In 2022, 584 yards on 38 receptions and 7 touchdowns. So it's found the end zone. He's also a good kick returner and punt returner. And he showed that off against TCU because he took a kick return to the house after maybe it was either a field goal or a touchdown. But he took a kickoff return to the house and scored a touchdown that ball game. He's a good special teams player. I hope they're calling Matthew Golden and at least seeing what the situation is. I've seen a lot of scuttlebutt to Texas. Like that seems to be the popular pick here. It he did have a relationship with Malcolm Kelly, had a relationship with his coaching staff. And so you would think that means something. I don't know if it, I'm not sure what it means in a full totality. But I'm sure NIL is going to be involved as well. But he did have a relationship with the staff in the past and committed to them at one point. So I hope that TCU is at least gauging that interest and, seeing what's going on with the situation is there. TCU Basketball takes on Clemson. Their undefeated record is on the line tomorrow. We'll talk about that more next here on Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. You can't mess around with your car. You have to get it right. Right parts, right fit, right prices. You can do that at eBay Motors. It's the reason why eBay Motors is so trusted across the industry. You can find the right parts for your vehicle. Passion, drive, and patience. It's what brings home the winning trophy and also what keeps your ride alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle, level it up to peak performance, superchargers, roof racks, everything you need, exhaust kits, LED lights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. Over 122 million parts for your number one ride, always exactly what you're looking for. And they have the eBay Guaranteed Fit program where the part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. All the parts you need at the prices you want. It's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride alive at ebaymotors.com. Again, that's ebaymotors.com. Right fit, right part, right prices. That Guaranteed Fit program is only available to U.S. customers. TCU Basketball, they take on Clemson tomorrow at 3 p.m. Schedule's kind of wonky right now just because, there's long breaks in between these games because of finals and everything that's going on. But TCU's going to take on Clemson tomorrow, and Clemson's also undefeated. They're ranked number 24 in the country. They're averaging 80 points a game, really good offense. PJ Hall is their leader. He's a center. He's averaging 20 points a game this year, and he's 6'10". He's got good size. He's one of those guys that can score from everywhere. He's actually shooting about 40% from 3 this season, which is pretty insane for a 6'10 center. But he can step out. He can hit the 3. He can shoot jumpers. He's really good inside the paint too. So it'll be a team effort. Maybe a week where Ernest Uday, if he could finally find a way to stay out of foul trouble and be effective, that would be a big deal in this ball game. I assume they'll throw Xavier Cork out there too, and might be a collection of guys. And maybe Emmanuel Miller will get the assignment because he's going to be playing so much on the perimeter. But PJ Hall is a really good player. The game's in Toronto as part of their Hall of Fame series. So TCU basketball versus Clemson. The ladies play on Sunday against Prairie View A&M, and then they get a week off as final weeks hits as well. But our first real true test, they went on the road. They beat Georgetown. They did that in dramatic fashion on the Emmanuel Miller buzzer beater. But exciting times for those basketball teams, so we'll keep an eye on that. We'll have more coverage of that on Monday. This is Locked On Horned Frogs. It's your team, and we do it every day.